What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Brand podcast. And today we are going to be discussing something for e-com sellers. And that can be, well, you're selling on Amazon, you're selling on Etsy, you might be selling on your own website, you might be selling on Walmart. Doesn't really matter. But what we're going to be talking about today is some mistakes that we see. And we actually just came back from an e-commerce event, Seller Summit, our good friend Steve Chu. And it was a great event, awesome event. He launched his book, which is a great book, Family First Entrepreneur. So if you haven't grabbed a copy, I'll give him a little shameless plug here. Go ahead and check out his book. It's really good. So what we realized is that, there's a lot of e-commerce sellers that are not taking advantage of content and creating content for the purpose of traffic, and not just any traffic, but targeted traffic, and really allowing your brand to show up not just for selling a product. I know we all want to sell our products, but we need to also think a little bit differently about it. And Chris actually did a full presentation at Seller Summit. He spoke there and outlined everything. What we decided to do here on this episode was unpack it a little bit, go over some of the mistakes, the things to do in place of making those mistakes. We're going to do these instead. And also, I'm going to share with you like the one traffic source that I am the most fired up with. And I think I spent the most time talking about at Seller Summit, like with anyone that would listen, because I was being asked, like, what do you think the best content strategy is nowadays? You know, like you used to podcast. Well, you still do podcast. You're on a podcast right now. You're listening. You do YouTube, you do blog content. Like, what's the best with AI? What's going to happen to content? Is it going to replace us? Like all of this. So those are the questions we're going to be answering. And we're also going to be talking about those mistakes that are being made to the e-commerce sellers out there. And if that's you listening, this episode is for you. So Chris, let's kick this baby off. I know you are rubbing your hands together and all ready to dive in. Where do you want to start?
So I want to start with just saying it was nice to see you, man. I haven't seen you in person since right before the unknown virus of unknown origins, right? The thing that no one talks about. So it's been like 2.5 years, I guess 3 years at this point.
It's been a minute, as the kids would say.
And it was funny because I had the same impression when I saw you standing outside of the apartment that we were renting that I did the first time. I was like, man, he's like taller in person. And then I realized that your shoes gave you like an extra 3 inches. Like you came in the apartment, you took them off. I was like, I remember him being like an inch or two taller than me, not like a full foot taller than me. And you took your shoes off. And then
3 inches, that's a heel, Chris. Come on.
I'm not the one buying your sneakers, man.
I had a pair of Nikes on.
You got to stop letting Scotty buy you those like basketball shoes, right? They don't actually add anything to your vertical. They just give you 4 inches more of height, so it looks like you have that. Yeah. But I went to open the door and I was like, man, he looks taller than he used to. Yeah. I know you've stopped growing, Scott.
Yes, I did stop growing years ago.
But we had a lot of fun, and in case you guys haven't noticed, I still don't quite have my voice back, but it was totally worth it. You know, you and I went. One, it was an excuse for us to hang out together, but two, it's an excuse for us to see some people that have been going since the beginning and to see a bunch of new faces. And one of the things that I love about that conference, the very first thing is everybody's really open and honest and willing to share and help other people grow, which you don't find a lot of other places. So if you guys are interested in e-commerce at all, we don't get anything from it, but go ahead, like if you're looking for a conference to go to, that would be the one, mostly because of the social side. Like the sessions are amazing, but to me, the sessions there, and I just gave one, right, are a bonus to the interactions that you have with people. And Steve and Tony do a very good job of doing that. But the other side of that is truly the content that you get there. And one of the things that you and I were noticing was people were making a lot of mistakes. And there's kind of 3 questions that you and I always get about content. And my entire presentation hinged towards kind of the last 2 until we started having all of these conversations with people on Monday and Tuesday of last week, realizing that they were making the same mistakes that we thought we had corrected previously for people. And so I went back and we ended up kind of redoing the entire presentation between Wednesday and Thursday based on that feedback. And it's something, Scott, that kind of no matter where people are in this journey, we see people making this mistake. I see multi-million-dollar brands making these content creation mistakes. And so, it's one of those things that we just kind of felt we needed to readdress. And so the three questions that you and I always get, Scott, are, why should I be creating content? How should I be creating content? And where should I be creating content? Right. And if the why isn't obvious to everybody right now, it's because content creates traffic and content creates audiences. And if you've learned anything from Scott and I, it's that the audience is the key to everything that you're doing. It doesn't matter if you want to just build a side hustle blog. It doesn't matter if you want to build an e-commerce brand. It doesn't matter if you just want to sell more stuff on Etsy. If you control the audience, that means you control the traffic. And then your only job is not to try to figure out all of the different ways that we can trick Etsy ads. It's to drive more people to your listings, drive more people to your store, get people to read your blog posts, get people to watch your YouTube videos. And if we can build that audience and we can build the loyalty from that audience, then whatever the monetization model is that we're using will sort of work itself out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I also think that, and I want people to realize this, like content is a great vehicle to get new visitors, right? Like that's what it's about. Like creating the content attracts the right people. So whether you're running ads, you're going to want to attract the right people. If you're doing organic traffic, content creation, blog content, YouTube videos, Facebook stuff, like you really want to put out the stuff that's going to attract the right people. But then once you have the attention of the people, then it's a matter of then coming back with more or giving more of other things that they might be interested in before they're willing to buy something. And a lot of times that cycle is longer than you would think. And I know there's studies been done out there is like how many times you actually have to make contact with the business or with the person before you actually make a transaction. It's going to vary obviously on the price point and all of that stuff. But I think the one thing that I see, one of the biggest mistakes, I guess we'll start right here, is just like one of the biggest mistakes that I see all sellers making, okay? And I'm going to say e-commerce sellers, but basically anyone that's trying to sell stuff online, the biggest mistake is not understanding and not realizing that it might take longer than just someone seeing your product for the first time and buying the product. This goes for Etsy, right? Like if you go on Etsy, you are not going to probably buy right away. You're going to favorite it. So that way there you don't forget where it was. You kind of bookmark it a little bit. Or you might just favorite the shop. Or you might just go, oh, that was cool. And then you leave, right? What we need to realize is if we can capture the attention and if we can hold the attention, I think that's the big one, holding the attention. And holding the attention can be described as like, okay, someone is reading your content, someone is watching your video, like something you're holding the attention, but it also means that you're coming back a week from now, showing up again in the feed or showing up in someone's email or showing up on YouTube with a new video. You're able to then continue to capture the attention. And I think that's really, really important. And once you understand that, especially the e-commerce sellers, because they're all just thinking about like, how do I sell my next coffee mug, right? It's like, how can we show up and be a constant reminder by finding ways to really help the market and give them content that is useful. And in some, markets, you might say, well, how do I create content around my market? There's probably a way. You just might need to be a little bit more creative about it. But that's the biggest mistake that I'm seeing, Chris, is like not understanding how the content actually builds attention and creates attention, but then also how it holds attention over time, and there's a lot of different ways that we can do it.
Yeah. And I think the place where that mistake really comes from is not understanding the purpose of content, right? Everybody, and we talked about this kind of during that presentation. I brought up the funnel. And if you guys have ever taken a marketing course or anything like that, you've probably seen some sort of a funnel, right? And it's the funnel of the availability of your niche. So the entire funnel is 100%. And at the top, it's people who don't really care about what you're selling right now. In the middle, right, it's kind of people who are indifferent, people who don't really care one way or the other, people who might be persuaded to buy. And then the very bottom of that funnel is that 3 to 5% of people who are in that buying stage, and especially in the e-commerce world. But Scott, we see this happening with people with YouTube channels. We see this happening with people with blogs.
Yep.
In that stage, the e-commerce seller typically says, well, if they have a concern there, what is the piece of content I should create? And then it's always product related. So it's how many ounces should a water bottle hold? How long does XYZ water bottle keep things cold? And while that is question-based content, which we are fans of, it's very product specific. And that's never going to reach outside of that 5 to 10% of the market who's either at the point of buying or could be persuaded to buy if you put the right offer in front of them. And what we really wanted to hit on was the other 90 to 95% of the market. How do you reach those people? It's not about you. It's not about the product. It's about the niche. And this is something, Scott, that you and I harp on constantly. And it's almost, it seems like a nonchalant answer that we give to a lot of questions because it's like, well, what's your niche? That's going to be the factor on which all of this stuff depends. But the reason that it depends on the niche is if you're only focusing on that bottom 5%, the people who are getting ready to convert or are already ready to convert, then you're losing out on the vast majority of people. Not only are you losing out on the ability to potentially monetize those people, to add those people to your email list, to make ad revenue from those people if you're running ads on YouTube or you're running ads on your blog, but you're also losing out on the relationship building portion of that as those people are moving through the funnel. And if you aren't top of mind when they make that transition from would probably buy if we put the right offer in front of them to ready to buy, if we're not at the top of mind there, or we don't show up number one on Amazon, we don't show up number one on Etsy when somebody types in our product, they're not going to choose us. They're going to choose someone else in many cases. And we can avoid that process. We can avoid having them make that choice by focusing our content creation efforts on that 95% of the funnel. The other thing that does, Scott, and one of the objections that you and I get every time we talk about content creation is, I don't have enough ideas. Yeah, because it's kind of boring to write 25 articles about your water bottle or to make 25 YouTube videos about one water bottle. But if we focus on the hydration niche, there's a lot more content that we can cover. And even if it doesn't directly relate to our product, it does relate to the person who will be buying our product, our ideal customer, our avatar, the person who sits inside of our niche. And if we can appeal to those people, it gives us substantially more opportunity to be able to monetize them with a product sale, to be able to monetize them by creating ad revenue through one of the other streams that we've talked about, or just get them on the email list so that when they get out of that top 90% that has no interest in buying anything, and they make their way into that top 5 to 10% who's ready to buy, that when we send them that email, they're going to buy from us automatically.
Yeah, no, I love it. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to change plans here a little bit, Chris. Maybe you're okay with it. Let's hopefully
we're flexible.
Here's what I'm thinking. Like, I want this to be like a real example so someone can really understand like how we would apply this. And the person that comes to mind is Adam. All right. Adam, our good friend. And we can even give a shout out to his YouTube channel. He just launched.
He just crossed 1,000 subs yesterday, by the way.
I thought he crossed it at the event because I was one of them. He said,
it was like 1,003 when I looked yesterday.
Oh, was it really? Okay. Anyway, he launched a YouTube channel. He's in the, I would say barbecue / smoker / kind of like grilling meat market, right? Like that's his niche. And obviously you could sell, the grills, you could sell pot holders or, the holders for your hands so you don't burn them. You could do, probably even briquettes or wood or whatever it is, right? Like, so there's a lot of different things he can sell. He's not at the stage yet where he's going to sell something. And he asked for advice. Once I heard that he started a YouTube channel very, just maybe like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was. Then I got really excited for him. So Chris, what I'd like to do is let's use him as an example, and we'll pretend that he has like maybe either he has some barbecue products that he's selling or that he is going to eventually sell. Because I think this is a perfect example. Like if he had already had a product, let's say it was seasons that he was making and blends that he was making or rubs or something like that, right? Let's say that it was something like that. People would say like, well, you just want to basically just show the rubs, right? That's all that you want to do. And maybe show like maybe even a couple of recipes, like that's fine. But then after that, you're kind of exhausted everything. And I disagree, because I think there's a lot of other opportunity that comes from once you get the attention, once you build the audience, there's a lot more that you can do to diversify your revenue. So I think what I want to do, Chris, is just kind of go back and forth with like what we told him in that private conversation at our networking party.
Yeah, I would say, so Scott, I don't even know that we have to like guess, because he actually does have an e-commerce store selling the least likely thing that people in this space would sell, because it's a giant pain in the butt, right? He sells brisket, like cooked brisket and other meats that are then packaged and shipped. And so most people in his space would just be creating content specifically around brisket. And if you look at his YouTube channel, he's doing a little bit of that. But it's really more about the culture and the things that other people would be interested in. Yes, there's some like recipe content. Yes, there's some of him actually doing this stuff. But even with his early content, there's a lot of changes that I would make to that just based on what we know. But even just looking at that, he did go broader than like how to reheat frozen shipped brisket. Right? Like that's not the kind of content that he's creating. He is creating content that would bring in that eventual customer, somebody who's really into barbecue, somebody who really likes smoked meats, but isn't necessarily at a place where they can do that themselves, doesn't have the time, doesn't have the desire, doesn't have the equipment. So that's kind of where I'd like to start. I think I like the idea of kind of going through this just to give him that little bit of feedback.
Yeah. And I know that he wouldn't mind at all. Here's the channel, guys. So I just want like people to see like what he's done already, right? Like, so he started this channel and I don't know what it was. Let's see down here. Okay. So 5 months ago, he actually did launch one. Then it was a month and then a month and then a month ago. So like he really started it 5 months ago, but then didn't really do much with it. So what I love about this though, is like, he sells this stuff, but you don't really know he sells it in the videos, because he doesn't really talk about him like, hey, at least I didn't catch that. But what he's doing here, just so you guys can kind of see, and this is again, a content strategy for someone that's in e-commerce, is he's creating videos for people that want to know how to smoke a brisket on a pellet smoker. Right? This was done 2 days ago, get 547 views, which is great, by the way, on a new channel. This one here got 8,000 views, smoke brisket on the Old Country. And so with this Old Country, the reason why he's putting that in there is because the Old Country is an actual brand, I believe, for the smoker or whatever. And so he's putting smoked brisket on there, right? And one bit of advice I did give him was, I was like, well, you don't need Lord Saunders Smokehouse on every video. We don't need that. So you can see he took my advice on this one. He didn't put it there. But I'm actually going to be working with him a little bit behind the scenes because I wanted to try to test out some of my theories and some of my strategies that I've been playing with our own YouTube channel. So if you guys want to follow along, definitely make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that stuff, because I will be doing more of this. The other thing I want to do, Chris, real quick, is I want to ask the audience, if you are here live or if you're here on the replay, are any of you creating content yet for your brand? Just curious, drop it in the comments. But Chris, what's the first thing that comes to mind here for someone that is wanting to create content to bring awareness to their brand, like we're doing right here with Lord Saunders Smokehouse, right? What are you thinking as far as like, okay, what's the approach here for him that will eventually lead back to monetization?
Well, so that I think, Scott, brings me back towards kind of that second mistake, right? The first one is being product focused. And Adam definitely does not have that problem. Yes, his product is meat and his content is about meat, but in his case, that's also the niche. The second big mistake is what I refer to as the field of dreams approach, or the spaghetti at the wall approach. Just kind of creating whatever comes to mind. Same thing with like Etsy, right? Like you and I have talked about, yeah, if you want to create more designs, it's actually better to niche down because it focuses your creativity versus just saying, I'm going to launch whatever comes to mind. And we see that mistake being made a lot of times with especially e-commerce brands that are doing content creation, but we see it kind of all over the place as well. And that is the mistake I'm seeing Adam make at this point. Now, again, we don't have a ton of videos here to look at, but it does appear that rather than using kind of a more structured approach, which I'm sure you and I will talk about here in just a little bit, what he's doing is kind of whatever comes to mind or whatever his inspiration is. And there is a little bit of method to his madness based on what we're seeing. I believe it's incorrect method just based on the things that we know about YouTube, but he is doing some search-based content, right? And then the other stuff appears to just be the thing that he wants to do that day, or like if he had some pork ribs. And what I'd like to see, and I'm sure we'll walk through this, is something that's a little bit more structured in terms of taking other ideas that have already worked either in this space or another space and bringing it to his channel. And that gives us something that we can then replicate and test against, versus just saying, hey, I put up this video, it did 8,000. I put up the next video, which is essentially the same thing. You know, it's a how to smoke a brisket on a pellet smoker. The other one is him actually smoking a brisket on a pellet smoker. And this one did 8,000. This one did 500. Why? Well, if we're using the field of dreams approach and just putting up whatever kind of our inspiration is that day and not using the data to inform our decisions, then we can't really know why one did better than the other. And so what I'd like to see is just a little bit more structure and a refocus of what he's doing content wise, but we'll dive into that here in just a minute.
Yeah. So I think to your point, right? Like everyone is still kind of like thinking to themselves, like, I have to come up with like how-to content. Like how-to content is like, yes, it's, you know, it's definitely something that YouTube is still, you know, it's still there for, right? I mean, heck, I just did it the other day. I had a problem with my car, and I looked it up like for transmission, right? I was like, you know, QX80 transmission slipping, you know, and I wanted to see if there was anybody else talking about it and kind of like if there was a how-to or something, right? So I'm searching for that. But in reality, that doesn't happen as much as it used to years ago. What's happening now is I'm going into my feed on YouTube, and then I'm just seeing what is recommended to me from other videos that I showed interest in. And so because of that, now we don't have to think about it like, okay, how many times is something searched for, right? If we're doing blog content, we still need to think about it that way because we're going after the search query versus it being like someone just logs in and sees blog feeds all day, right? It's not the way it is. YouTube is that way. So I probably should back up a little bit and say this, like the one question that we had gotten asked, and you and I were actually having this conversation with another guy that is starting from scratch. And he's like, if you were to start over right now, what would you choose? Would you choose blog content or would you choose YouTube? What was the answer, Chris?
99.9% of the time, YouTube, unless you're terrified of the camera. Why? Because we can get content that is indexed faster, reaches more people more quickly, and then repurpose that into blog content. Also, you know, and you and I have been hearing this nonstop. The scale at which this will ever happen is still up for debate, like it always is, and the timeline is always up for debate. But like AI is coming, right? Content creation is dead, and the answer is no, it's not. Not even close, right? Even for the AI to understand new things, somebody would have to create an original piece of content about that. But YouTube or video-based content, whether it's YouTube, Rumble, wherever you're deciding to post that, is going to be much harder to replicate and much harder to get cut out of because of the fact that it is a person communicating the content. Whether you use AI to help you write your script or whatever that is a different story, but it does give you a little bit of an extra defense and a little bit of extra future proofing. And you get the data back a lot faster. And I was having this conversation actually yesterday with Michelle Scott, and she said, what would you recommend? Because she had already started doing some written based content for the new thing that she's starting. I said, look, like one, you're good on camera, so YouTube would make a lot of sense. Two, I think you should be doing both. Don't stop that just to start this.
Right.
But with where you're at, the amount of data that you're going to get back on the written content over the next 3 months is very minimal. As soon as we post a YouTube video, even if we have 0 subscribers, and this is a huge mistake I see people make on the YouTube side of things, YouTube is trying to actively find an audience for that video. Why? It comes back to YouTube's algorithm. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard us talk about Etsy's algorithm and Amazon's algorithm. If it's one of those websites, what is their goal? Their goal when somebody searches on that platform is to show you the product that you are most likely to buy. Google's goal, whether you phrase it as a question or not, is to show you the content that exists on the internet that most closely answers your question. YouTube's goal is to keep you on the platform watching another video. So even if you post a video today, Scott, you have 0 subscribers, it's your very first video, there is a chance that YouTube will put that video in front of somebody because of all of the things they know about the video to see if they'll watch it. And then if they watch it, then they put it in front of 5 people. And if some of those people watch it, then they put it in front of 10 people. And that's how you see some of these channels blow up overnight. So the thing that's really nice is not only do we get to understand all of the data behind this, it's almost too much data, but we get that chance much more quickly than we do anywhere else, because YouTube doesn't care how many people are subscribed to you, Scott. If I put up a video that they think is going to be a better fit for those people, they're going to show my video until the data tells them that it's not a better fit. And so using something like YouTube not only gives you the chance to monetize, not only gives you the chance to do that, but it also gets you a lot more data, and it gets you some of those early wins a lot quicker. And Scott, you know a little bit about some of the stuff I do outside of the brand creators world, and we're working with one of our clients who, you know, had a YouTube channel very similar to what we did forever with the Amazing Seller channel, which was just podcast content. He posted his first 2 videos just within the last few days, and an average podcast video on that channel would get around 200 views. Both of those videos are up over 1,000 views, and almost none of those views came from subscribers. Why? Because the YouTube algorithm says, hey, people who are interested in certain niche might be interested in this video. Let's give it a chance. And so you get that data back right away.
Yeah. Hey, I was doing a little bit of digging here in the background, so I wanted to show some examples. And we've got some questions that came in. If you guys have any questions on this as well, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And again, if you guys are just coming in to the stream, we are talking about content for creating awareness, but also attention for your products, right? And really it comes down to the people that would be potential buyers of the product. So you have to think about, like, okay, if someone was going to buy my thing, right, what other things could I talk about that would be related to that? And that's really what we have to talk about. There's someone had posted in here, how do you create content for someone that's just selling mugs? And that's a great question. And this is why Chris and I are not big fans of having a general store necessarily. Right now, can you do that and will it work? Yes, you can be like a novelty shop. You could totally do that. If you were going to do that, then you would probably want to do a lot of humor-based type of stuff, right? Like it would probably be just to get the attention of people that are kind of into that humor, that type of humor, right? I do believe that it's going to be harder to sell one type of mug in this case, because if you're doing like bass fishing mugs and then you're doing like mom to be mugs and you're doing all of these different mugs, it's all of these different niches. And can you do that? You could, but you'd have to be more of like an entertainment type of channel where you might do like surprises for a mom to be, right? You would do a whole bunch of like different, or maybe it's like 5 ideas to surprise mom to be's, or, you know, maybe it is, a gender reveal, right? 5 ideas to, to reveal the gender. Or maybe it is, you have like 5 different people that submit their videos to you of their gender reveal, and then that's your content, right? It's like you have to kind of go a little bit before the actual purchase and get the interest. It would be harder to do a variety of different ones because now you're just kind of like an entertainment channel or an entertainment brand, novelty, whatever. That's why Chris and I are big fans of, like, in this case, like using the barbecue one as an example, right? Like that is a perfect example of what we're talking about here. And let me pull up something else here real quick. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can see my controls here. Yes, I can. There we go. And because I think this will demonstrate what I'm talking about here. All right. So this one here, now, if you guys are listening to this on the podcast, you can't see this, but it says Mad Scientist Barbecue. Okay. Now, Mad Scientist Barbecue has 554,000 subscribers and 228 videos. Now, this channel is all about barbecue. That's it. Okay. And this is also a great example. And I'll read to you some of the titles so you can get the understanding of like what we're doing here. And then I'll also share with you what we told Adam, our advice was as far as what I would do for the next year, the next 12 months. It's all I would do. We'll kind of talk about that here in a second, but let's just look at this. So I cooked a brisket while waiting in line at Franklin Barbecue. Okay. That's not a how-to. That's like, I kind of want to see that. That kind of sounds interesting, right? 245,000 views 4 days ago. Do you think if someone watches this, they're into barbecue? Do you think if someone watches this, if they're into barbecue, there might be something in there that they might purchase from my shop if I have barbecue type items? Do you also think that this person with 245,000 views is being monetized on the YouTube platform? Probably yes, meaning they're making money for people just watching the video. Do you think that there's affiliate offers being displayed in the description of this video? Probably yes. So do you see all of the other benefits that come from it other than just trying to sell your product? There's so much more that can be done. Does your smoker have it? This thumbnail. This piece of metal can make or break your offset smoker. Chris, talk about that for a minute. Why is that a powerful title? Even though it only got 52,000 views, why is that pretty powerful?
The biggest thing behind that is just the curiosity, and that especially with YouTube, but any kind of content that's not strictly the search-based content, right? A question, that is going to be the key. So you want to know what the piece of metal is. So whether this is a blog post, a YouTube video, an Instagram reel, whatever that is, if you are interested in having an offset smoker, you have an offset smoker, this is going to get you to click on it and read the article, watch the video, take advantage of whatever format this content is in, because you want to make sure that you're not screwing up your offset smoker. And even if you're a smoking expert, not smoking like smoking, but smoking like smoking meats, then that's something you're going to want to know as well. Scott, I wanted to touch on the Franklin Barbecue one and a potential reason why that blew up. So the other thing that is happening here is he's taking advantage of some of the pop culture things related to barbecue, right? Franklin's in the barbecue community is considered to be one of the top barbecue places in the world, right? And so and they're also famous for their giant line. So if he had enough time waiting in line to cook an entire brisket, if you know what Franklin's is, you've been to Franklin's, or you're just generally interested in it, it gives you, again, that curiosity piece, but also a little bit of the pop culture element there of like, Franklin's Barbecue is really famous. So what did this guy do? He was there waiting in line, and he waited in line long enough that he was able to cook his own brisket before he was able to buy the brisket that he was looking for.
Let me also bring this up. Look at Bucky's brisket review, which I had their brisket there. It wasn't that good.
It's
yeah,
I don't get Bucky's.
Yeah, it's
maybe
insane. If anybody's
all
ever
of our
been to
Texas
Buc-ee's,
people can yell now. That's fine.
Yeah. If anybody ever has been to Bucky's, it's a very interesting experience. But look, so he just basically Bucky's brisket review. That's all it is. 257,000. Then look at this. He throws in Ted Lasso, right? I did the Ted Lasso barbecue tour, right? So again, throwing in something that is well known. So these are just some things that I would be doing, and I'm going to be advising that Adam does, is taking a look at this channel. Okay. This channel has a lot of subscribers. Subscribers really, really don't mean as much as they used to. Because you can even look at this. You can say, okay, this has 245,000 views 4 days ago. This one only has 52,000. This one has 41,000. This one has 80,000, 42,000, 145. So what we kind of do, and this is what I would be recommending for Adam to do, is to look at like a channel like this and see the ones that kind of stand out. So this here stands out because it got more views than most of their other videos, right? These are his baseline. We call it a baseline, is pretty much like 50,000. Right? So 53,000, 62,000, like average. But then he's got this one here, did 241. This bacon rib will change your life. Leroy and Lewis Barbecue. That thumbnail is amazing too. Like post bacon rib. Right?
I'm kind of getting hungry.
Yeah, me too, man. This stuff looks amazing.
This is a terrible idea. Why are we doing this?
So if Adam is watching this, which he probably will, and if he doesn't, I will probably send him a message saying to watch this. This is a great example of how you're going after not how-to content as much as you are curiosity-based, name brands, or just looking at something that would be interesting to look at if you are into barbecue, right? So if you're into barbecue, and let's say that I'm into barbecue, I started to watch some barbecue type videos, right? I want to do this myself. Like I'm like a backyard barbecuer, right? On the weekends, and I'm kind of into this, and I like watching this stuff. Wife goes into the grocery store. I'm in the car. I open up YouTube app, and then all of a sudden I start to see my suggestions. Well, what if I saw this? I just bought this 1,000-gallon smoker, and I'm bringing it with me. That I would watch, right? Because I'm into this. I'm like, holy crap, that thing's massive. Man, I can't imagine owning that thing. I got to check this out, right? Am I buying something from him right now? No. Could I? Sure. Am I going to get paid from a YouTube view? Yes. Am I going to have the potential to sell my t-shirts if I sell them? Yes. My mugs if I sell them? Yes. Am I going to have a way for someone to go and maybe look at the barbecue resources that I have in my description that would be an affiliate link over to Amazon to a smoker? Yes. So there's all of these other things that happen from showing up and creating content in this way. So let me just say, the one thing that I told Adam, that I said to him, was what I would do if I was you is I would focus on building the audience for a year. And I really wouldn't worry about the monetization. And what I mean by that is I wouldn't worry about how I'm going to make money, because that stuff will happen pretty easily after you start to build the audience, right? Now, if you're coming at it from a different place and you already have products, does that mean you don't sell your products? No, you let your products kind of sell themselves, because you might mention it. You might have, if you have, maybe you're a t-shirt shop and all you do is sell barbecue type t-shirts. Well, you would put, that on while you're cooking, right? Or if someone else is cooking, or maybe you send that to an influencer that's a barbecue channel and you don't have a big channel. You send your merch to that person and say, hey, would you wear this in your video? That'd be amazing. And they might say, no, but we will for $500. And then you can decide, is it worth it for me to be sponsoring this type of YouTuber or whatever? So just some things to think about when you're doing this. But my advice to him was build the audience. You build the audience, pretty much sell whatever you want, right? As long as it's to this audience, right? It's created for this audience. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, I would say, Scott, and it's not exactly this space, but it's a very similar space. Are you familiar with Guga?
No.
Guga. So pull up one of his YouTube channels. He has like 5 or 6 now, but he started more in like the grilled side of things. And now they have a sous vide channel. They have a clip, they have 5 or 6 different channels. But
what's the name of it again?
Guga, Guga. I believe he's Brazilian. Guy out of Florida, that just out of the content that he was creating was asked so much for the spice blend that he puts on all of his steaks by his audience, to say, hey, instead of me trying to like figure out the ratios, instead of doing any of those kinds of things, he now has a physical product, which is the Guga rub, which was something he was just using in his videos and people were asking about.
It's a cool logo.
So one of the things you would get a kick out of some of this stuff, because a lot of what they do are experiments. And so if you look down, just scroll down a little bit, they electrocuted a steak to see if it would cook, right? 681,000 views. They dig up old steak recipes, from 300-year-old cookbooks to do it. They'll cook it in the garlic butter from Papa John's to see how it turns out, right? They do dry aging experiments with everything, right? I dry age steaks in butter. They did it with Nutella. They did it with a whole bunch of things. And one thing that Guga has done really well, whether intentionally or not, is stumbled across something that, again, another person in the cooking space that would be really good at this, who happens to be on thumbnail number 4 here with Guga, Josh Weissman, does really well, which is when you find something that works, you figure out how to create variations of that. So in the case of Guga, they do, different aging experiments. They do different cooking methods. In Josh Weissman's case, a lot of what he's doing is, can I make a Big Mac faster or cheaper than McDonald's? Right. Yeah. So he'll do, can I make a Big Mac cheaper than you can buy it at McDonald's? And they'll go to McDonald's, they'll buy one, and then he'll make the buns, make the burger, like do everything from scratch. And he found out that that was something that worked really well for him. So now there's every fast food restaurant in America, they've started to do but better, I think is what they call it, or but cheaper, which is, can I make this cheaper at home than I could get it over at McDonald's. And that is something I'd like to see Adam doing a lot of, which is if we can find something like, I cooked a brisket in line at Franklin's Barbecue. Well, why not do a barbecue tour and do that at all of the barbecue places? Like if that video worked, go have that conversation in a couple different places, because it's going to continue to work with the audience. If people were interested in it with one variation, there's a really good chance they're going to be interested in it in another variation, because this is more entertainment based content, not directly answering a question. You couldn't just answer the same question over and over again, but you can create small variations on videos that are working if it's more of an entertainment based video that appeals to the broader niche.
Yeah, their thumbnails are on point, their titles are on point, and they're actually, check this out. It says AI said my steak is awful and his is better. What? And so again, they're trying to use AI to get in there, right? Because it's a big, topic right now. I also love this too. I cook steaks using electricity, and this is what happened. So it's like anytime you're doing that type of stuff, like here, I soak steaks in buttermilk and this happened. Right. So they're doing a lot of that. I soaked steaks in soy sauce for 1 month and ate it. So there's a lot here to be learned. And if you're selling like mugs right now, and I know this might seem like kind of out there for you, start to think along the lines of like, who are you actually serving? And if you don't know, that is where I would start. I would start thinking to myself, what could I create content around? And it doesn't have to be YouTube content, but my gosh, that's what I told Adam. I was telling everyone there right now, I believe YouTube is probably, I don't like using the word easy, but it's easier. And I don't think it's going to be affected as much as blog content will be in the 3 to 5 year range, because it's going to be very hard to do what these guys are doing in video through AI. Now, can you create a talking head video, have AI, have your voice even be in it? Yeah, you could, but it's not going to be this. That would be super hard to do. And people are going to show up for this. This is like, you can't like create something using AI in a video that's going to be able to compare to this, in my opinion. And if it is, it's going to be a long time off. So yeah, video, YouTube, like a huge opportunity right now.
I know you said you don't want to say that it's easier, but I would argue that it is easier just because of the feedback that you get, right? Yeah. Even if your first video that you post on your YouTube channel gets 10 visits, YouTube kind of gives you all of the information you need to make a small change the next time. Mm-hmm. Even now, Scott, you and I have been creating written content, blog post style content since the 2005, I think, is the first blog post I ever wrote, right? And I still don't know what I can do to do better, because I don't get that feedback from Google. It either shows up in the search results or it doesn't. And yes, we can go look at the articles that outrank us and see what they're doing differently and make those changes, but that doesn't necessarily help me the next time around that I'm creating a piece of content. With something like YouTube, you get all of the information the entire way through the process, from how many people saw it to how many people clicked on it. And then out of those people, how many people watched it? Where did they fall off? All of those kinds of things. And if you hate analytics, then YouTube isn't easier. But if you're willing to even look at 3 or 4 numbers and say, if I can make that number better, it's going to make everything better. What do I need to do to improve just that one thing? The very next time you post a video, you get to see those results. And that's one of the things that I think does make it easier. There's actual knobs, like really well-defined knobs to turn within that ecosystem that don't exist in many of the other places.
Yeah. Guys, do me a favor too. Like Chris and I, we could geek out on this stuff for like days. Like, I mean, when I was at the event at Seller Summit the year before, I didn't go to the event. Chris went to the event, but I guarantee that YouTube was not as big of a discussion as it was this year. And maybe it's just because of kind of like, you start looking at certain cars, or you start looking at like, oh, I really like that truck. I don't see a lot of them around. And then all of a sudden you start seeing a lot around. I don't know if it's that kind of thing where it's just because it's top of mind for me, but I'm really starting to hear more and see more that YouTube is actually a newer opportunity right now because of the way that people are discovering the content. It's not necessarily just the search. Does that mean that you're not having people find you through search? Yes. And the funny thing is, Chris, one of our top videos on the YouTube channel right now is something, I think it's, if I was to start over on Etsy in 2023, this is what I would do. Okay. That's like one of our top videos. It's over 300,000 views. It's getting probably 4,000 views every couple of days, like whatever, right? Like it's getting a lot of views for us. And, it's getting probably 40 or 50% from search, which was not intended, by the way, right? Now, when Chris and I look at the analytics, we actually don't want to see as much traffic from the search. We want to see that YouTube is recommending it, because that's a bigger opportunity for us.
So Scott, why don't we want to see that search traffic? Not that we don't want to see it, but why do we prefer the other kind?
Because it shows us that there's more opportunity for us to be discovered, because YouTube is actually finding other audiences for us that might be interested in our content through their AI engine, right? So we're not just banking on like, oh, we have to wait for someone to search for it. What they're doing is they're like, oh, people are interested in Etsy, or people are interested in print on demand, whatever. They're going to go from their other data points of other videos that have that content that's, audiences have watched, and it's going to introduce it to those, and it's going to test it against that audience. So it opens it up to where we're not waiting for people that are searching. We're actually just waiting for YouTube to introduce it to more audiences. And if we can get a better click-through rate, if we can get better retention on our videos, then we're going to be shown to more audiences. So to me, it opens it up more where we don't have to wait for a certain number of searches, like, oh, 1,000 people search for this a month. Great. That's my potential. Here, it's like there's 100,000 people that this could be shown to that potentially could be interested in it.
Yeah, I think from the nerdy backend standpoint, right? Out of all of the traffic on YouTube, typically what you see is 75-25 or 80-20, depending on what kind of channel you're looking at. That 75 or 80% is coming from like the homepage or the up next type of video, the stuff that shows up along the side. The remaining 25% is subscriber notifications, YouTube search, external traffic, right? People coming over from Google search when they show a YouTube result. 75% of the traffic that's coming there isn't coming from the search. And so we're actually underwhelmed by the fact that that video is doing as well as it is, because it could do better if we figured out a way to change where that traffic was coming from. Or you can also just accept that it's doing that and then figure out how to capitalize on that on the back end, which is really what our approach has been. And so the vast majority of traffic on YouTube is not coming from search. It's not coming from external traffic. It's not coming from subscribers. It's coming from them saying, this is the video that Chris should watch next to keep him on YouTube. And if we can get him to watch that video, then we'll figure out, based on every video he's ever watched and all of the possibilities, including the video that just got posted right now on a new channel with 0 subscribers, which video is the one that's most likely to keep him watching after this one. And that's 75 or 80% of the traffic on the platform. Yeah.
So we're going to answer some questions here, guys. And you guys can see this kind of already turned into like a YouTube thing, which I can't help it. I mean, it's kind of where my head's at. And it's kind of like where I'm seeing a huge opportunity lie in front of us, and one that we're capitalizing on. And again, like, I am going to be helping Adam as best I can to just give him recommendations and things that I see and that, potentially we can kind of test. He's willing to allow us to do that. So we'll probably do some updates. I might even do a dedicated like live or podcast where we kind of set the stage and kind of say, okay, this is like episode 1 of this series, and see what he can do over the next 12 months. And maybe we can track the process and we can kind of go through and show the recommendations and then come back a month later and then do an update. If you guys would be interested in seeing something like that, leave your comment saying, yes, you'd be interested in us doing like a YouTube case study where we kind of go through and kind of show how we would grow that in real time. And we'll do updates. So if you guys are interested in something like that, let us know in the comments, because it's something that we're going to be doing behind the scenes regardless. So Chris, I think I want to wrap on the content mistake, right? The biggest thing is for people is really they're not thinking that content is for them because they sell products, when in reality, if you kind of flip it on its head and you go, okay, really, I need to understand where my customers are and where they are consuming content that is related to my niche. Perfect example is like if you're into bass fishing, you're probably watching bass fishing videos, right? So if you're watching bass fishing videos, there's probably a good chance you're buying fishing lures, and you're probably a good chance that you would buy like a funny bass fishing shirt or a joke, or you'd probably get a gift for someone in the bass fishing world, or you might be doing tournaments, so you might want to buy stuff to win your next tournament. Like there's all of these things that come with it. But if we flip it over, instead of it being like, well, we're just going to go after people that want to buy my product today. Now, I'm not saying we don't do that too, but we also want to focus on getting the attention and building the audience. And if you do that, I'm telling you, I promise you, everything else becomes easier. I said it, Chris. It is easier when you have an audience.
It absolutely is. And Scott, with that in mind, right, not being about the product, being about the niche, and being able to build the audience by going after the things that they're already passionate about. Word Girl let us know that she does kind of have a theme to her mugs. She said, there are some watercolor things, but it's mostly nautical type stuff. And so to me, if you are in a product heavy space, right, you do operate a mug store or a t-shirt store, the question would be, what is your niche? And although, Scott, we don't typically consider like comedy to be a niche, if that's really your thing, then you can create a comedic YouTube channel and build an audience that way and then drive them back to your products. But with something like a nautical themed mug shop, right? Well, who are the people that would be interested into that stuff? People who are interested in beach houses, but also boat owners, right? So what is the type of content that they are watching? What are the type of people who are really into the nautical world? What is the type of stuff that they are watching? And Scott, that to me really ties into the question we got from Reaching Higher, which is there a way to figure out what type of content is most often requested? If I'm starting from scratch, do I need to do research to see if the subject is a viable choice? Yada, 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 right? And so once we know what the niche is, right? In this case, Word Girl, if we're going after like people who are into nautical stuff, then how do we figure out what the content is that people are looking at? With blogs, it's a fairly straightforward proposition. We can start with a lot of the question-based content. With something like YouTube or video-based content in general, we can't really start there. So we have to really focus on what, Scott, you and I kind of agreed on that we were calling opinion content last week, just to give it kind of a bigger overarching thing, right? That would be basically everything you saw on the second barbecue channel that we showed. It's his opinion, why he's doing things, where he's doing things. It's not answering a question directly. It's kind of everything that's not an answer to a question, right? And so the answer here is we use the platform we're creating the content on to tell us what is working. How do we do that? We create a profile on that platform, whether it's as, the barbecue YouTube channel, whether it's as a nautical enthusiast, right? Whatever that is. And we just watch the content that person would watch. Remember, the algorithm is your friend. Everybody thinks it's a big, scary Terminator style robot, but it's really there to serve whatever the goal of the platform is. With something like Instagram, something like YouTube, their goal is to keep you on the platform. So if you are watching videos on that platform, as the user would be, somebody in your niche, you're clicking on the things that you know that they would be interested in, and you're not going off and randomly watching football highlights or basketball highlights or dance recitals or whatever else is on YouTube, right? Funny cat videos. Then the algorithm is specifically designed to continue showing you stuff on that channel that would get you to keep watching that kind of stuff. And you're not going to be copying any of these things, but really what you're looking for are themes that continue to work. So if we go back to Guga as the example there, Scott, if we were researching something in the barbecue space, right? Just scrolling through here, we see that his bad videos do a few 100,000, 4, 5, 600,000. But his really good videos do well over 1 million. So what are the things that we see consistently doing over 1 million? His experiments, right? I deep fried steaks using Papa John garlic sauce. I did this to a steak. I did that to a steak. Weird things that he's doing, right? And so then we say, how do we make something like this work for us? So in Adam's case, he's not doing steak, but he could still apply a very similar concept, right? Guga cooked a steak with electric. Let's compare electrocuting a brisket to cooking it on on an electric smoker or something like that, right?
Yeah.
We just have to take the things that are applied and that we see working consistently for other people, and bring that over to our space. So if we're going back to the nautical thing and we have a boat themed channel, right? It's, I tried this weird trick to keep water off the deck, right? And you can go through a whole series of those things. But just look at the channels that are kind of the inspiration for you, the channels that you follow, and see if you can find the idea, right? Kind of that grain of truth in the idea that is working really well for them. So it's not just putting up a random piece of content. It's looking at what is already working and figuring out how to apply that to your space.
Yeah. I mean, here's a great one too, like $30 versus $500 steak. Can you taste the difference? Right. That's a great one because you could do the same thing with brisket, right? $30 versus $500 brisket, right? Can she taste the difference? Right. So yes, getting ideas here. And I really want people to understand that, like, what we're really doing here is we're just trying to show up in the marketplace and be different. And in this case, it is YouTube. So if you're watching this, and I think we had a question that came in and said, like, if you were to basically do this for the purpose of creating affiliate money, right? Like affiliate offers, would it be YouTube or would it be blog content? And if you would have asked me this probably a year ago, I would have said blog content. And the reason why is because, well, I didn't realize the opportunity on YouTube. I think it's also evolved over the last 12 months to be even more like this. But I also now see that there's more potential for reach quicker than waiting for blog content to rank. Now, if I could do both, I would do both, right? I would start with the video and then I would post it on the blog. I would embed it and I would write a blog post that was basically going through and kind of, giving, the notes and kind of like the outline and all of the details that we talked about. The video itself is where I would start, because also once you build a YouTube audience, you get to 1,000 subscribers. And again, the subscribers really don't mean a lot other than it is a benchmark that you have to hit in order to turn on monetization. You also need 4,000 watch hours, right? And I believe that's in a 28-day period. So you need to hit that number. So once you hit those numbers, then we turn on monetization. Immediately you start making money. Well, with a blog, you have to write the content, rank the content, and then get a substantial amount of traffic for you to turn on an ad network like Mediavine that pays well, or AdThrive, which is going to be 50,000 page views. Well, it's going to take you longer to get 50,000 page views than it is going to take you to get 50,000 views on a video, right? In all honesty, it really is. Your chances of hitting that are a lot greater because you're not waiting for the video to rank. Okay. That doesn't mean that you're going to put out one video and all of a sudden it's going to take off, because you still now have to almost train the YouTube AI engine, right? Their ranking. You almost have to train it that your channel is about this topic, right? But when you do that, you start to open up, because it starts to test it on other audiences. And then once you kind of get that dialed in, then it becomes easier to hit those numbers. The other thing that happens is then you have your affiliate stuff, right? Once you get your affiliate stuff rolling, you put that in your description. You can mention something on a pod or on a YouTube episode. And then what happens is once you start to build that audience, you're going to have people reaching out and going, "Hey, I sell this rub. Would you be willing to do a sponsorship for me? I'll pay you $1,000 for the video to be in a sponsorship." So now you make $1,000 there. Then you have your merch that you create, right? All of those other things. So much can come on the back end of it versus starting with a blog and then from there building off of that. Okay. Now, if you're afraid to be on camera, get over it. That's what I would say. Like, I mean, honestly, like, I know there's some people that are just deathly afraid of being on the camera. I would try to figure out a way to get on camera. Now, are there ways to do faceless videos? There are. You could do the shoot and then just narrate over top of it. But again, that is something that's going to be easier to replicate with AI in the future. So that could have a shorter shelf life. That's why if you can put your face on camera, it's you doing the experiments, doing the overview, doing the, the test or whatever you're doing, that is going to perform better. And it's going to also mitigate any risk that you might have of AI coming in and taking over your, your channel, because people can just copy you. So I'm not a big fan of the faceless stuff, myself personally. Chris, any other thoughts on that?
No, I think you nailed it. I would always say face on is better than face off. Now we're getting into Nicolas Cage territory over here, but yeah, if you can get in front of a camera, do it. Here's the deal. You're going to hate it. You're going to hate the first video you put out. You're going to hate the 100th video you put out, but you're going to look at the 100th video you put out and go, man, that was good. You're going to look back at the first video and go, man, that was terrible. Then when you get to the 1000th video, you're going to go, man, that was really good. You're going to look at that video number 100 and you're going to go, that was really bad. Why did anybody watch that? And it's the natural progression that you have when you're doing things like this. And everybody also always wants to know, Scott, like, do I have to look like Mr. Beast, or do I have to do? And the answer is no. Start just with this thing, right? Shoot it. Use really basic video editing, just jump cuts. You don't even have to put in like B-roll or fancy images or any of those kinds of things to start. Once you start to figure out what's working with your audience, then you can test against those things and ramp that level up as you get more comfortable with each step of the process. But the very first thing would just be to pick that up, shoot that first video, edit it in the most basic way possible, which would just be with a jump cut, right? Like literally just cutting here and then bringing the clip together. And maybe I go like this right at the end of the frame because I wasn't standing in the exact same spot or whatever. Not that big of a deal. And in fact, if you look at even some of the biggest YouTubers, they still take advantage of jump cuts. They just also mask it with something else. You don't have to get that advanced. Just start where you are. Start with the equipment that you have. Get that first video up. And then once you start to see, okay, people are clicking on it, people are watching it, where are they falling off? What can I change there? What can I test there to see if I can keep more people at that point? Then you can start to bring some of those things in. But if you can shoot a very basic video, that's going to get you 90% of the way there.
Let me share another quick little story. I went out to dinner with a buddy of mine the other day. And I met him here in South Carolina. I went out to dinner with him, just him and I. We went out and got a beer, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. His daughter does volleyball. My daughter does volleyball. They do indoor, we do beach. And we sat down, and we were talking. We were having this conversation because he's been wanting to create a blog. He's wanted to do YouTube, but he just hasn't done it. And one of the reasons why he hasn't done it is because he is, I don't want to call him a perfectionist, but where he thinks everything has to be perfect, right? And so I had said to him, because I came back from this, the event, Seller Summit, and I had been talking to people, and Chris and I, were talking about our, YouTube stuff that we want to do and all of the growth that we've seen so far. And I'm just like on this YouTube high right now. And so I said to him, I go, dude, you got to start your YouTube channel. And his YouTube channel, here's what it's going to be about. I'll tell you, Legos. The guy is a huge Lego guy. Okay. And so he has Legos. He actually takes Legos. He'll buy, and he knows all of them. Like, this one's going to be a limited run. This one here is going to be out of, production. Like, he knows all of that stuff. Star Wars, all of these ones, right? So right now, he's been doing this for the last year. He'll go and buy some sets that are going to be going out of stock, or they're going to be limited editions or whatever. And he holds them, and then he sells them, and he flips them on Amazon when they go out of stock. And he told me last week he sold one for like $180. He paid $50 for it. So I said, Dave, his name's Dave. I go, you got to start shooting videos and basically start off with maybe doing a listicle, like the top 5 Lego sets that are selling on Amazon or something, right? So he can kind of go at the angle of like people that want to flip Legos and they can go in and buy them. Then he can do like certain limited editions and talk about those. He could do like a reaction video to someone that's done a really crazy build or whatever, right? So I got him all fired up, and he's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I go, I've heard that before from you. I said, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a deadline. You need to have that video done by next Wednesday. It needs to be posted at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And he's like, really? You're not even going to give me 2 weeks? I go, no, I'm not going to give you 2 weeks. I'm going to give you a week. And I'm going to basically say it needs to be up. And he's like, okay, I can do it. So he sent me a little sample of his clip the other day. And he said, I'm still shooting, but this is what I got so far. Like, it's horrible. It's terrible. And I looked at it, and it's not terrible. It's not horrible. Did I give him a couple of pointers? Yes. Did I tell him that don't worry about the things that I just suggested. Make those corrections on the next one. Get this one published, because the biggest thing that you can do, the best thing that you can do, is record and publish, and then just get a little bit better on the next one and get a little bit better on the next one. And he messaged me last night. So today, it is Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time has already passed. And he messaged me this morning and he goes, I'm not going to be able to have it done. Can you give me till tomorrow? I said, yes, tomorrow will be your date. And then from this day forward, every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, you need your video to go up. Because that's the one thing that I would say that my success, Chris's success, has really been around being consistent. I know, Chris, you talked about being consistent in your presentation. It is so important to be consistent. So just wanted to share that with you. Again, like, some people are like, well, how do I find the niche that I'm going to go into? He's into Legos. Okay. Now, can he sell affiliate stuff for Lego? Yeah, he can sell kits that are being sold on Amazon, and he can get a commission on that. He can probably create merch, but it would not be Lego merch. It would be something along the lines of bricks or something, right? Like something he can come up with that would pertain to a Lego builder, right? He could do that. He can make money on the YouTube channel because he's going to be able to monetize it once he gets to a certain threshold, right? He'll be able to do that. Be able to do sponsor deals, people that are serving that community that he could have on as a sponsor. So there's all of these other things that come from it, but the biggest thing is figuring out the angle and then going for it, and then just start publishing and being consistent, in a nutshell.
Consistency.
Yeah. Yep. That's why we've been here every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time.
Sometimes on a Thursday, but
sometimes, but we don't miss a week. But
that's the thing, right? And so you don't have to have this all worked out up front. You don't have to know exactly how to create the perfect YouTube video. You don't have to know exactly what your niche is, but you do have to have an idea of the type of person that would be buying your product, right? Who are they? What are they doing? And then we can backwards engineer that into the type of content that they would be interested in. Reaching Higher wanted to know, Scott, what is your take on content creation YouTube channels? And I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but my thought would be anybody that's taking other people's content is something that we would want to avoid. Even if you're doing like commentary on that, that's not necessarily helpful on the e-commerce side of things specifically. But if you give us a little bit more details on what you mean by content curation channels, we can give you a little bit more of a more accurate answer. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
There's a guy right now, Chris, I forget his name. I know that you and I both looked at his channel. But he sells office chairs and office desks. And someone would say, like, well, how do you create videos around that? Well, there's things like 5 ways to be more comfortable at your desk, right? Like things like that. 5 things to help your legs while standing at your desk or something, like in the office, right? But then he also did like maybe like a head-to-head of these 2 popular chairs. He doesn't sell them, maybe, right? But he's getting the attention of people that are interested in chairs. Or maybe it is a weight test that you're going to do to see if it can hold this much weight. We had someone at the Seller Summit that sells like fire retardant work boots. And they're like, how do I create content for that? I go, well, the first thing I would do is light them on fire and see how long they last before they burn. And he's like, wow, that's a great idea. I go, yeah, and you could do that with a whole bunch of stuff. You could submerge them underwater for 3 days. Here's what happened, right? Like you can do all of these things around your products.
Right. What is the claim that they are making? And then how can we test it?
Yeah.
Right. So yes, that is more product focused content, but it's not necessarily the Timberland XYZ boot. Like that's not necessarily what people are looking for. It is, do Timberland boots stand up to their fire retardant guarantee or something like that? Right. And so then you're getting just the people who are interested in safety boots. You're getting people who just like watching things burn, I guess. And you're also getting the people who are genuinely interested in buying the product to see if it will hold up for the use that they need. Now, right, like not a ton of people need fire retardant boots because they're not stomping around in fires, but firemen certainly do. There's a bunch of other jobs where you would want something, right? Anybody working with hot metal, I would think would definitely want some level of fire retardants on their boots. And so it's not just about the person that's going to buy it right now, that, you know, the firehouse that's looking to buy new work boots for their firefighters. It's anybody who's tangentially interested in that space. Welders would love that content. Firefighters would love that content. Woodworkers to some extent would love that content, right? Anybody that works with their hands that would be interested in those boots want to know that stuff. And so that would be the approach we would take with something like that. That's more of a product focused market.
Yeah. I think John had said, could we present popular places, fashion, and events, and at some point post our store links? Yes. Here's something that I thought was interesting, Chris, which I think if someone was into travel, like let's say that someone wanted to get into the travel space or something like that. And I forget how I stumbled on it, but this guy travels. Okay. And what he does is he takes his camera and he goes on a walk. And he goes on that walk and goes through the mountains. He goes where you can see beautiful mountains, snow caps, and all of this stuff, right? And that video is like an hour and a half long because he goes on an hour and a half walk. And the cool thing is he'll commentate through it. So, like, oh, that's this. He's like a historian in a sense, right? Where he's kind of giving the guided tour. And you might be on your treadmill walking in Alaska, right? And his channel gets millions of views. And I was like, that's brilliant because someone's going to be sitting there on that video. They're going to come back to that same place to see where else they've been. So now they can kind of travel through him and they get to have a nice view on their walk. I thought it was brilliant. And that's
actually something that sounds very similar to, and I think Peloton is doing this now, but I remember going to Disney World as a kid and they had stationary bikes with a video screen. And that's exactly what it was, right? Like the faster you pedaled, the faster you went on the walk, right? Like that kind of a thing. But it's like that, but with narration and in the real world versus, whatever else. So again, great idea, right? You can make a channel out of anything. It's just who is the right person for the content. So Scott, if he was going to sell products, what types of things could he sell? Well, he could sell anything related to hiking or walking, but more than likely he's going to be selling stuff related to travel, packing cubes, suitcases, digital downloads for the 10 things you should bring and shouldn't ever bring into Colombia, right? Like all of these kinds of things. He then has the ability to sell on the back end because he has the eyeballs. So if somebody's watching that, my walk through Anchorage, Alaska video, chances are that at some point they're going to think about traveling to Anchorage, Alaska. If he has something that can help them either with that trip or the next trip that they have, they're going to buy it from him because they already have that relationship.
100%. And then you get ad revenue on that. You get affiliate deals, you get sponsorships deals. Maybe hotels will want to sponsor you or sponsor the channel because people are in that area. There's so much opportunity. And if you're already traveling, you're going to go on a walk and you're going to film yourself on that. Obviously you need a good camera. You need to have something that's going to have a nice steady flow. Like you're not going to want it to be all shaky and stuff going through. This was like you're gliding through and you didn't see him. This was faceless, by the way. He had probably had a lapel mic on and he's just kind of walking. Sounded good. You can hear the snow crunching as he's going through it and stuff. Like it was really cool. And actually my wife was like, she put it up on the TV and just let it go. Right? This guy, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy's making bank because the video has got ads being paused and as you're watching it, and people are just letting that thing go. His retention is huge, right? So it's pretty cool.
I like
pretty
it.
Cool. Yeah. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and wrap up, Chris. Guys, I know this was a little bit random here today. We went on a little bit of a YouTube, little bit of a binge there, a little bit of a rant in a sense, because we're pretty pumped up about it. We're not YouTube experts. We're not claiming to be. All I am saying is we are focusing a lot of our time. We have seen a lot of different things over the years with traffic. I have gotten traffic from YouTube way back in the day when I first started my first online business in the photography space, but it was all search. We were just going after search traffic. Now it's kind of evolved, 15 years later, and it's different now, right? So now I'm kind of back on, to it's gotten my interest. Still doing blog content, still getting traffic there, still, using email, all of those components. It's just a matter of where do you want to spend your time. And the biggest thing right now that I would just say to anyone that would listen, like if I'm sitting down having that beer, having the coffee, whatever, and we're having a conversation and that comes up, is like, what would you do right now? I'd build an audience in a niche that I am interested in, and then I would eventually monetize. Like that's what I would do. And I would start right now, most likely on YouTube, and I'd backfill it with like content from the, from the blog. So that's what I would do. So, all right, Chris, anything else you want to say before we officially sign off here today?
I think that wraps it up.
All right. So guys, that is going to wrap it up. Do me a favor. If you got value from this, smash the like button. That would be amazing. Subscribe this way here. You don't miss out on any of our upcoming live streams. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can always go subscribe on iTunes or any of the other platforms that it is streaming on. And if you want to be part of our free community, you can head on over to the Rock Your Brand community at brandcreators.com/group. We'd love to have you. And that's where we all hang out. That's where the cool kids hang out, by the way. All right, guys. So that is it. That is going to wrap it up. As always, take care, take action, have an awesome, amazing day. And we will see you right back here on the next episode. Take care, guys.